Hi, class. I just want to make a couple of comments for this week. Nothing really earth-shattering. The one thing I'll say is I'm really enjoying the diaries. Now, originally I started the diaries just so I can see whether or not you're actually using something in class and implementing it in the way you do things. But for an online class, it's really useful because I have an opportunity to, get to know you a little better. Anyway, don't forget to do your mini quizzes as they come up. I like the book, Thinking in Bets, because Annie Duke does a really good job of articulating how do you deal with uncertainty. Thing is, everything in her book I already do, but I thought she tells it much better than I do, and it was kind of nice to have it all in one place. In terms of my comments about storytelling, I hope I didn't offend anyone by using that snippet from the Trump trial. The thing is, I'm not passing judgment of whether or not Trump should have convicted or anything else. But what I just found interesting is that a lawyer said he lost because they didn't tell the right story. And that's the first thing you should always think about when you're trying to persuade someone. Fortunately, we didn't have a lot of time to work on that. I'm actually going to have an entire class about it. Yes, TEM200SummerWk3 coming to you in fall of 2025, where basically I'm going to spend about 6 weeks on storytelling and then go into writing and then go into presentation. And so hopefully this will give you big advantages over other people. Now, in terms of the conceptual thinking homework, most of you got the crossing the street question right. And as you can imagine, if you notice, the problems got harder and harder and harder. And that's what I like to do with homework. Make it progressive, so you challenge yourself a little bit more. But the big thing that people don't really think about is crossing the street is about life and death. How many times have you decided to just bolt across the street or whatever? And it's because we've become so comfortable with it. And this is what I mean by when I talk about, going on mental autopilot when you do things. You don't realize what you're doing. And driving is a good example. I was once driving from Phoenix to San Francisco, and I dropped my Coke and and I was driving by myself and it was rolling at the feet of the passenger side. And so what did I do? I put one hand on the wheel and I started reaching over and trying to grab it. And then it suddenly occurred to me, this would be a really stupid way to die. Anyway, stories matter. And the thing is, stories are about logic. Now, the big thing about conceptual thinking, and for those of you who are engineers, you probably have a lot more experience with it. It's difficult to pick up, especially in a week. My wife pointed out to me that what separates MIT from everybody else is every class is based on conceptual thinking. And what they're trying to do is prepare us for the future. The principles and ideas don't change, but details will. But if you understand those principles, then dealing with the details becomes a lot easier. This is why an engineer can have a career for 30 years, even though all his knowledge is pretty much obsolesced in 5 years. But in every problem, there is a crux. There's one or two things that drive the entire problem. And if you can figure out what it is, then you can solve it. And, for example, Battleship. And the nature of Battleship is that it's an area board. And it's an area board where your ships are taking up area. That was the key to it. It's a grid, A10 or whatever it is. I don't know. I haven't played them forever. But what that means is that you can develop a strategy of coming up with a grid pattern that basically, if you complete this pattern, you will hit the aircraft carrier, which is the biggest ship of all. And if you hit it early, then you can start moving on to other ships and basically tighten your grid after making it very large. Basketball. A lot of you talked about teamwork and strategy and everything else. But when you get to the crux of something and you had the right idea of, okay, whoever scores the most points wins. How do you get points? You get a possession, and then at what percentage of those possessions do you score in? So that's shooting percentage. And how do you get percentages? Well, now this is where you start getting into steals and rebounds and that sort of thing. And so this is the base strategy of basketball. And actually, if you really look at that, then arguably the greatest team ever was the 1986 Boston Celtics. Keep in mind, I hate the Celtics. I was raised in New Jersey. We used to make fun of Boston people all the time, and they would always rip on New York. The Tesla question. A lot of you pointed out the cost is an issue, but what drives the cost in the electric car? It's all about the battery. The battery drives the cost. And this is where Elon Musk, mining for his own lithium and everything, Musk has even said he wants to get out of the business. Everybody said, oh, he's vertically integrated. He has an advantage over everyone else. He does not want to be in the vertical integration business. What history has shown is people who are perfectly vertically integrated are the ones who end up losing. And the reason why is the suppliers who can focus on that specific business can always do it cheaper than a large business because you have too many things to think about, whereas they only have one thing to think about. And so he really wished that startups would go into things like mining and stuff like that, which we really need right now. And so if you can come up with a good way to do it, there's a big opportunity there. And this is where a lot of people are making fun of Toyota. Well, here's the thing about Toyota that everybody's overlooking. First of all, Toyota, people don't realize the revenue is $9 trillion a year. These are people who know how to make cars. And everybody says, oh, they're, have their heads stuck in the sand and all. What Toyota's doing is they realize the winner is the one who can come up with the best battery, and that's why they're working on the solid-state battery, that if they could pull that off, they can leapfrog everybody. And so that's what they're working on. It's kind of interesting because recently I bought my wife a RAV4 hybrid, and the guy at the dealership, that was a very acrimonious negotiation. But the guy said this is the number one selling car in our lot, so people who make fun of it. Not only that, recently I went back to Silicon Valley for a family thing. And let me tell you, the electric car was a pain in the ass, trying to find charging stations and stuff like that. In Fremont, California. And then I drive up to one and it's got like 6 kilowatts. It says, oh, this will be fully charged in 11 hours. And even when I found a good one, it says, this will charge in an hour and a half. And I was stuck. So, yeah, the people who own Teslas are in really good shape because they put the infrastructure together. But keep something in mind. Tesla's not making any more stations, or not a lot of stations. And so if all of a sudden there were 5 times as many Teslas on the road, even a 15-20 minute wait, when you start calculating out the throughput, it starts to get really bad. Not only that, but people aren't thinking of infrastructure. And that's that. Like, we predicted the amount of power would be this much, and then we realized that we need to grow our power capacity to match it. Well, here's the thing. Nobody counted on AI, and this is what nobody talks about. Data farms use up a lot of power, because it's not only just power, it's cooling. And all of a sudden, our growth and consumption of electricity is far greater than what our planned growth rate is for electricity. So I guess we're all going to end up like Texas. For those of you who live in Texas, no offense. Anyway, if you have any questions, please let me know. And we move on to the next part of the course where we start talking about the groove.